Hello, everyone. Welcome to this Dhamma Talk series with Venerable Maggavihari. Uh, from we have here Venerable Maggavihari from IIT, International Theravada, uh, International Institute of Theravada Buddhism in Sri Lanka, and we are going to continue this Dhamma Talk series every Sunday through IIT and Dhamma USA social media network. And today we are going to start our first uh, opening Dhamma Talk. I would like to start with a little explanation about Venerable Vatagada Maggavihari. Venerable Vatagada Maggavihari is the Vice President of the International Institute of Theravada. And Venerable Maggavihari, an old boy of Royal College, is one of the prominent disciples of late Na Uyane Aryadhamma Mahathera, from whom he took his ordination in 2006. Having lived and learned under the supervision of Aryadhamma Mahathera for continuous 6 years, Venerable Maggavihari went to Myanmar in 2012 to further his studies on Theravada Buddhism at the International Theravada Buddhist Missionary University. There he learned both BA and MA while extensively studying Theravada Buddhism as preserved by the Burmese tradition. He started his teaching career as an Abhidhamma teacher in Nauyana Forest Monastery and continued to do as at IIT-BMU, helping his fellow colleagues. As a senior student, he taught Abhidhamma, Vipassana, Pali, and Vinaya to a number of junior students at IIT-BMU. In addition, he has enormous experience with monastic life, both in Thai and Burmese traditions. As a practitioner, he spent some time at Wat Pa Nanachat practicing and learning Thai forest tradition, and he practiced a few other meditation techniques such as Mahasi and Mogok during his stay in Myanmar. Currently, Venerable Maggavihari serves as the Vice President of the International Institute of Theravada, conducting online courses for both laity and monastics all around the world. His English medium course on fundamentals of Theravada Buddhism is highly praised by many who are interested in the subject. So, Venerable Maggavihari's introduction to the Western world, I think, will be very helpful to all of us. And Dhamma USA and IIT jointly venturing this program every Sunday to help benefit many people around the world, especially the people in the West. And I would like to also tell you about Dhamma USA a little bit. Those who are new to Dhamma USA, our mission, um, we are focusing on spiritual coaching through research, education, while community care will be dealt with social welfare drives as per the Buddhist doctrines, unbiased on the basis of race, ethnicity, religion, language, or culture. Our vision to be an exemplary non-profit international movement on spiritual coaching and community care. Our values: we conduct meditation, yoga, spiritual counseling, healing and therapeutic chanting, and teaching Pali language. In a nutshell, you may also go through these websites both IIT and Dhamma USA for more than 10 years. IIT, International Institute of Theravada, is a monk training institute dedicated to capacitate monks who are capable in attaining their own liberation. This is called Attahita Bhikkhu, guiding others towards liberation, Parahita Bhikkhu, and sustaining the sasana by accurately following the code of discipline, Vinayadhara Bhikkhu. So with that, I would like to introduce you, Venerable Maggavihari, as our main speaker today. And I would like to start by inviting all of you to pay homage to the triple gem by reciting Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato 3 times. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato
Samma Sambuddhassa.
Namo
Namo Tassa
Bhagavato
Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa.
Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato
Samma Sambuddhassa.
Over to you, Venerable Maggavihari.
Thank you very much, Sadhu. And first of all, may I pay respect to you, Venerable Bhante, may I, Sumitta, and for giving us this, inviting me for this Dhamma talk to share the knowledge, whatever I have, and also venturing this Dhamma talks in collaboration with the IIT, International Institute of Theravada, and the Dhamma USA. Good morning, everyone. I hope it's morning in USA at the moment, though it's night here in Sri Lanka. If I directly go into the topic of today's Dhamma talk, as the first talk, I would like to, I preferred, or I thought of going in to explain about one of the very basic topics of the Buddhist philosophy. As we all know, the Buddha, the great spiritual master, abandoning his household life, went into the forest and searched for a liberation which would bring the ultimate peace. In his quest of searching this truth, the phenomenon of the world, eventually in the end he ended up finding out the truth, and he declared it as fourfold. We all know it as the fourfold, the Four Noble Truths. Noble in the sense that it is considered as the utmost truth, which would never be false in whatever means, as the Buddha has considered. I think most of you are aware of these four truths, which we call the suffering, dukkha satcha, and the origin of suffering, dukkha samudaya satcha. Then the cessation of the suffering, dukkha nirodha satcha, and the path leading to the cessation of the suffering, which we call in Pali dukkha nirodha gamini patipadariya satcha. Out of the four, my attention today would be given at the fourth truth, that is to say, the path leading towards the ultimate cessation, or the cessation of suffering. In other way, we can call it a liberation, being freed from the suffering, or we can also call it the cessation, the ending of the suffering that is about to come. In one way, if we follow the course that the Buddha has explained these truths, it's better to always start with the suffering and then go into the origin of suffering, and then to the cessation, and finally explain the path, because that's the sequence that he has followed. So it's always beneficial to follow that. But I personally thought that most of you would have been following the Dhamma for some time, especially in collaboration or in affiliation with the Dhamma USA. So most of you are aware of these all four truths. So in order to bring some insights about the path in simplicity, I thought of elaborating some insights or giving some explanations, clarifications on this path towards the liberation. This path towards the liberation is being explained as eightfold by the Buddha. Eightfold. So there are 8 factors explained here. Yeah, so they are all, if you go into the translations, they are normally translated by scholars as the right view, samma ditti, the right thought, samma sankappa, right speech, samma vacha, right action, samma kammanta, right livelihood, samma ajiva, right effort, samma vayama, right mindfulness, samma sati, and the right concentration, samma samadhi. This is how it's normally translated, but it can have various explanations according to the person how we explain it based on the teachings. Before we plunge into these eightfold factors which leads to the liberation, briefly we need to understand what is a liberation. Liberation means being freed from certain suffering. So we can call certain unpleasant experiences, or the word doesn't come to me quickly. So sort of discomforts that we may experience. So being freed from some such suffering is called a liberation. So suffering is rendered in Pali as dukkha, and the cessation or liberation is the nirodha, being freed from that. So these eightfold path leads to this liberation. Then before that, we need to know from what we get liberated, that is from suffering. And what is the suffering? According to the Buddha's explanations, suffering means the existence that we have. Though it's not something very pleasant to the world, in his investigation, what he found was that though we admire this existence, though we admire our lives, when we look into it, we can easily find that it's full of afflictions, it's full of troubles, it's full of unpleasant experiences, unpleasantness. I think most of us can easily understand it, because from the moment we are born, we experience this hardship. That's why most of the children who are born comes out from the womb crying, because it's not a pleasant experience. From the moment we are born, coming out of the mother's womb till the day we die, we do need to go under experience lots of hardship. A very common hardship is the hunger that we get. Though the ones who are well off would be able to quench this hunger or satisfy this hunger by having pleasant food. But it is sort of a sickness that reoccurs or comes again and again, though we satisfy ourselves with food. So like by the thirst and the nature of our body is getting dirty, and the need for defecation and urinating, and lots of sickness that we encounter in day-to-day lives, finally, eventually, old age, aging, and finally the death. Therefore, if we look into this human life, it's obvious that it starts with the suffering and it's destined to be end with the suffering, the ultimate suffering, which we call the death, with which we are supposed to be separated or be apart from all the beloved ones and all the beloved things. So this existence, according to the Buddha's explanation, is indeed suffering. And then as the second step, he explained that why this suffering is happening. It repeats, or it occurs again and again after death. So if this existence ends at the end of our life, with the death, there is no need of any effort, because the something which is full of suffering would end up in the end. So the problem was recurring, because it keeps on recurring. Therefore, people like Buddha, who understood this, who were able to see the past lives and future to some extent, had this problem, because if this is recurring again and again without an end, so there should be a stop to this, because we are born, we live a certain life, and we are born again, and we do live another life, and we forget what we have done in the past lives, and this keeps on happening. And he found out that there is no permanent existence in the world. Therefore, he eventually had to find out what is the cause for this recurring of this suffering. So he termed it as dukkha samudaya, and he mentioned that the cause of this origin is the craving, the wanting to live, wanting to continue to exist. Then one can ask a question: can't there be a permanent life that would not end, and which is full of happiness, that as like in the divine realms, as it has been explained in certain books? It's a good question, that can't we have a permanent life? Personally, I feel the Bodhisattva, in his quest, in his seeking, spiritual seeking, or spiritual research, we can call, he would like to have a permanent life that is full of happiness, because he gave up all the luxuries he had, because he was not satisfied with a life that would end one day, that would end up being aged one day, that would end up being sick one day. So he wanted the utmost happiness. That's why he could give up a very wonderful, beautiful, lovely lady like Yasodhara, and also give up the son on the day he was born, and also the kingship that would be bestowed upon him by his father, for sure. So he was in search of a greater happiness, that I would say, another way to call it. Like I like to see the Bodhisattva's renunciation as not. It's also, we can say that he was fed up with the suffering of the world. In another way, we can call, he went for the utmost happiness. He was finding a happiness that would not change, that would not end one day. Therefore, surely he would have thought of a permanent life that would not end, and it will be a good choice if there is such a life. The argument that he had, you can look into this when we can understand this when we look into the scriptures with deep insights. His argument was, what is the cause of the birth? Why every being is born? Due to what cause? Craving is a main factor. Craving plays a huge role. Why craving is there? Why do we like this existence, which is full of suffering? That is because of ignorance. And the instrument or the thing that facilitates this birth, or thing which brings out this birth in the end, is the karma, is the good or bad deeds that we have done. If a bad deed comes forth to give a rebirth or give a life, it would be not a pleasant life, being in the woeful realms. If it is a good deed, he'll be born in a good realm. So according to him, these are the three major factors that plays the biggest role in the rebirth of the recurring of this existence. Then you look into the karma. Karma is the proximate cause, the closest for a rebirth. Then it's a very logical argument that we can find in the Buddhist scriptures. Why is it that every life has to end one day for sure? Why is that? So there should be some logical reasoning for that reason for that. The reason lays upon the nature of the karma. Karma means a good or bad deed. Now think like if someone has done a good deed, supporting the parents or supporting someone who's in need, supporting with charity or observing a good virtue, whatever a good deed one has done, this can result in a good rebirth. In the highest levels, someone can come into a very higher concentration like jhanas and be born in a very high celestial realm, which are called brahmas even. Now think about this karma. A good karma, a good deed could bring a good life. The nature of this karma. Now think about a charity. Now if we donate something to someone and this karma gives us a rebirth, the nature of this karma is it always has a beginning, middle, and an end. First, we think of donating. Now, think that someone donates for a charity. Then there's a period that we organize for this, and then at a certain moment we relinquish our property, we offer it or we donate it, and then in the end, after donation, we may rejoice on it or we may express it to others, and we may share our merits. So there are always three phases in such a deed: the beginning, middle, and the end. In Pali, we call it Pubbha Chetana, Munchana Chetana, and Apara Chetana. That karma or that deed did not exist before our intentions to donate. It will not exist after we have done it. Then later on we get into our day-to-day work. We are not performing that deed anymore. So we can see a deed has a limit. It starts, we do it, and we finish it. So this deed carries a certain energy, a potency, I would call, which can bring a rebirth. That is in some books it is termed as kamma sati, the power of the karma, or kamma samangita. Would translate, if you render it into English, it's the nature which exists within us due to the deeds that we have done. Whatever it is. Now this force, this ability to give rebirth. Now think about this. Now, due to a certain karma, we gain a certain force within us. A certain force remains within us. That force is capable of giving a rebirth. If the karma, now force is of that karma, if the karma is limited, if karma is impermanent, if karma has a beginning and end, so it means that it's a limited deed, I would call, impermanent deed. An impermanent deed, the potency of a certain deed which has a certain capacity, because we can see the karma has a certain capacity, it cannot have an unlimited capacity. Therefore, the potency would also have a certain limitations. So it has to have a certain capacity, a limitation. So if karma is giving a rebirth, a limited karma is giving a rebirth with a limited capacity. So when there should be some time that the karma finishes its ability, its force. So then, if the life is a production of a karma, if life is brought up by karma, it doesn't mean that everything in life is decided or already destined by the karma. Karma is the force that brings up the life, and it's sort of a life blood according to this Buddhist philosophy. So as the karma force ends, the karma which gave rebirth ends, the life would end up like a lamp of which the oil is finished. Therefore, if that karma is something limited, which has a limited capacity, a life brought up by this, or life produced by this karma, would always has a limitation. It cannot be unlimited life which would exist forever. So this is a very logical argument, because we can see Whatever deed we do has a certain limitation. Even if you enter into a jhana, a very high absorption, that would always also have a certain capacity, because we know there is a lower jhana, there's a higher jhana, so we can increase this. And even the highest jhana, the 8th jhana, still there are different capacities according to means. And also, you enter into the jhana, you come out of the jhana is not going to exist forever. Therefore, all the deeds, the mundane deeds, the sublime deeds such as jhanas, all of them has a limited capacity. So their potency is limited. So if a life is produced by a karma, I would call if, because according to the Buddhist philosophy, according to him, if the life is produced by karma, then that life has to have a certain limitation. So it should end. Therefore, the Bodhisattva ruled out the possibility of a permanent life. So his teachers, during his quest, after his renunciation, at some point he went to meet 2 renowned teachers, Alara Kalam and Uddaka Ramaputta, who were well known for their absorptions, the concentrations, the meditations. And he practiced under them, and he gained the highest concentration that a normal human could gain under the guidance of Alara Uddaka Ramaputta. These 2 teachers advocated that this is the final liberation. After attaining these jhanas, you would end up in a permanent, everlasting life. That was their doctrine. Bodhisattva just gave it up, reasoning that if it is something conditioned, how can it be permanent? Because conditioned means it's produced by a certain cause, and that cause is jhana, is the jhana. And he can experience that jhana is not a permanent thing. It is a higher attainment, but it's not permanent. So if the cause is not permanent, how can it produce a effect that would be permanent? So that was his logical argument. So he ruled out the possibility, even with the highest absorption, you will not be able to attain a life that would last forever. Then he had to find some other way in order to get for the highest liberation. So then in the end, he ended up finding out that if someone is born, is destined to be dead one day, then the only way is, if death is the greatest problem, if aging is the greatest problem, if the life which is full of suffering is the problem, the only way out is you get rid of the birth. You don't let the birth to happen again, which is not very appealing to the normal world, for sure. But for the ones who are really interested of getting rid of the suffering, that's the only way for a permanent happiness. So I'm talking about the highest spiritual doctrine that the Buddha has taught. It doesn't mean that the Buddhism doesn't explain about how to be happy during a life, how to practice and live a good household life, how to maintain a good family relationship with others. Yeah, Buddha has explained these things. So different topics has to be dealt with different approaches. I took the highest topic, like the most spiritual and one of the deepest topics in the Buddhist teachings. So ultimately, if someone wants an everlasting happiness, so there's always a if someone is interested in such an happiness, the only way out, according to the Buddha's philosophy, is that you have to get rid of the birth. If birth is there is going to be a certain end, and as long as the craving is present, karma would give a rebirth. So if someone wants to end up this cycle, you have to get rid of the birth. And that is called the liberation, that the dukkha nirodha. You remove the causes of suffering, and you end up in the liberation. And he found out that how to achieve this goal. In order to remove the causes, craving, karma, ignorance, all these causes. Another point is he went deeper into the causes even. According to him, he found that karma is the proximate cause. Due to karma, we are born, and karma determines our natures of our life, not everything in our life. The initial life we get is mainly determined by the karma. If bad karmas, one would be born in a woeful realm. In a good karma comes forth, we would be born in a blissful realm. That is the basic philosophy. Then that karma is why a karma would get activated and gives a rebirth. That is due to the craving that we have, which also can be explained somewhat logically. I'll not go into much. I'll not plunge deeper into this topic. Then why is craving is the reason for karma to get activated, and also the karma to have such a potency in giving a birth. Craving is the main reason. So craving, why someone would crave for life, why someone would crave for an existence, why someone would like to continue to live, that is because of ignorance, according to him. Because we know, according to Buddhist philosophy, if you investigate, we find out that the existence is full of suffering. It's an impermanent thing. Most importantly, it is made out of non-self elements. It's not a self, it's a non-self elements. We normally call mind and matter, and we understand that we can explain why mind and matter are not selves. So, but it appears as selves, which is another deep topic that has to be explained one day. Mind and matter manifest as a self, but it is not a self when you investigate thoroughly. With your first-hand experience, you will be able to find out that this cannot be a self. Therefore, it's a non-self, impermanent, suffering existence. A non-self existence, impermanent existence, and a existence that begets or causes suffering. So if the existence is of this nature, why would we crave for such a thing? That is because of our ignorance. As long as we don't know this, do not see the truth, not in the very deepest level, and also if we do not keep on observing this truth regularly, craving would pop up. Craving would always surely come up, and we would get attached to this, and the life is of the nature appealing for this attraction. So he went deeper into the causes and found out that it's not that he has to. It's not possible for him to remove the karma as long as craving is present. Then he found out, no, it's not even possible to remove the craving as long as the ignorance is there. So then he had to attack the ignorance. What he has to remove is the ignorance. Ignorance means moha or delusion or avijja in Pali. So what he has to bring up is vijja, opposite of this. If darkness is there, you have to remove the darkness by light. You cannot remove the darkness by any other means other than the light. So light is fully opposite of darkness. So in this way, he explained that if you want to remove the avijja, ignorance, you have to bring the wisdom. So that we call vidarshana, vipassana, the great insight. In order to attain this insight, so the utmost insight that would dispel or expel all the delusion, so one day we would not have any sort of craving towards this existence. So that is the achievement. That is what we have to do in our practice. Then he further explained that it is not possible to come into this level of understanding, wisdom, only just developing this faculty, this intellectual or faculty of understanding. It would not just come up in that way. For that, it has to have some prerequisites. You cannot just develop wisdom out of nothing. The wisdom is also caused by some causes. So what are these necessary factors? So he explained it is eightfold. Wisdom itself is a one factor. Then the remaining seven are utterly necessary in order for us to attain this wisdom, which would dispel the ignorance, which eventually removes the craving and would not cause any karma to give a rebirth. So as a result, after the death, there would be no rebirth, no suffering. That is the liberation of suffering, liberation from the suffering. So this is the normal logical explanation that we can bring in Buddhism. So now we go into this path. What are these requisites? What are the necessary factors that are required in order to attain this liberation, to to gain this liberation. So it is eightfold. Samma Ditti, the correct view, which I have already explained, translated. Samma Sankappa, the correct thought. Samma Vacha, the correct speech. Samma Kammanta, correct action or right action, we can call. Samma Ajiva, right livelihood. Samma Vayama, right effort. Samma Sati, the right mindfulness. Samma Samadhi, right concentration. So we'll now try to understand this according to the time that is left for us. How do we see this in a simple way? The Buddha mentioned in some sutras that the path starts with samadhi. That's why he initially explained samadhi in the first place. So the first samadhi that we gain in this path is the knowledge that we gain through listening to Dharma, listening to the discourses, either to a learned monk, to a practitioner, to a monk who has already attained the liberation, or even from the Buddha himself, or just by reading books that has been written by some scholars or learned monks or monks who understood the Dharma. So whatever the means is, you have to have some input to understand this. It's not possible for most of the beings in the world to come into an understanding about the correct philosophy of the existence. Therefore, one has to listen to Dhamma, one has to study the Dharma for some time in order to have a correct, solid view. So one can have an argument, how about the monks who attain liberations in listening to one discourse and so forth. So that has to be explained in terms of the samsara, because samsara is life, mind stream is connected from life to life. So the ones who have practiced in past life would surely gain some insights in a shorter period. So for example, if you think about a class, a mathematics class, there are children who can grab the theory very quickly, and some would try hard and it would take time for them to understand. So there are differences of the beings. That is mainly due to different factors. But in general, we have to say, in order to understand mathematics, you have to take some time, you have to do some practice, you have to do some exercises, you have to keep on reading, arguing and so forth. Then only you will be able to be a mathematician. So in the same way, talking about the ordinary beings, one has to listen to Dhamma, one has to study the Dhamma at least to a certain extent. So then we come into understand what the Buddha has mentioned about the world, and we get some glimpse or understand, like maybe shallow understandings, what the Buddha meant by his discourses, what the life is it really suffering, is it possible the rebirth could happen, is it really non-self? So we may get some logical point of views, some sort of solid understanding would appear through studying, listening to the Dharma. There are two types of beings who does not need this listening. These are the bodhisattvas, who are destined to be Samma Sambuddhas in their final life, and the bodhisattvas who are destined to be Pacceka Buddhas. We normally translate them as silent Buddhas, who would enlighten by themselves. So these are the two special beings who does not require any Dhamma learning, listening in their final lives. So they can come into this idea, philosophy, by themselves, in their own. Other than that, beings, the Savakas, has to listen to some Dhamma and to get some basic understanding. Then, much deeper the understanding is, then comes the thoughts. Now, if we understand that if we get to know that the world is full of suffering and there is something called a liberation, and also there are woeful states, there are blissful states, and this is good, this is bad, kusala, akusala, this is what we should do, and this is what we should abstain from. So having that understanding would eventually causes us to have some thoughts. What happens is, now knowing that this is good and bad, most of us would think that I would rather do good than bad, because doing bad would bring me ill consequences. So at least I have to do some good in our lives. At least we should try to end up in a blissful state after this death, or we should try our best to reach towards this liberation one day. maybe it's not in this life, or one day at some time. Or maybe we should try to understand the Dhamma deeper. And knowing that according to the teaching, studying and understanding that sensual pleasures would give us lots of hardship. So we would think, oh, it's good at least for us to be apart from sensuality for some time, to experience the spirituality as explained in the doctrine, to see how is it really blissful being apart from sensual pleasures for some time at least. So likewise, when we study a certain doctrine, this is logical to any doctrine, especially with the Buddha's teachings. So when you study and understand what the nature of the world, what comes up is certain thoughts. So then people would think, okay, it's better that I would practice some time in a daily basis. It's good that I would listen to some Dhamma. Good that I would go to a meditation retreat and practice. It's good that I would do some charity, observe a good sila. So these thoughts starts to pop up. It's very necessary. These thoughts are very necessary. This is called samma sankalpa. It's normally threefold, but we can explain it as fourfold. Nekkhamma sankalpa, that is thoughts of renouncing, thoughts inclined towards practice, especially giving up the sensuality and heading towards the spirituality. Then we have avyapada sankalpa, thoughts of abandoning ill will and developing loving kindness to all the beings, even to our enemies, because we get to know from the doctrine that being with metta would gives us a lot of blessing, a lot of bliss. So we would experience it. So then we always develop thoughts that I would always may the other beings be free from suffering, and we develop a certain pleasant thoughts towards the beings, living beings. And avihimsa sankalpa, thoughts of supporting others, not inflicting pain on others, trying to alleviate the pain of others and try to alleviate their poverty or bring them out from suffering. And also any other wholesome thoughts of charity, thoughts of observing sila, thoughts of studying the Dharma, towards the spirituality, the wholesome side. So when we study the doctrine deeper, more the thoughts would come up, because when you get to know the benefits of these practices, thoughts would come up. That occurring of this thought is very useful, because our actions are determined mainly by our thoughts. We act based having thought. So having proper thoughts is very useful for our the remaining stages. But these thoughts are shaped by the view that we have. Now think about someone who believes in a doctrine, adheres to a doctrine, saying that, which would claim that hunting or sacrificing living beings would take you to a heaven, or killing some people would take you to a heaven, or these kind of wrong advocations. If someone believes in such advocations, what happens? So eventually people would start to think to do such things. So thoughts would occur, or thoughts of killing would occur. If someone adheres to a doctrine that says there cannot be any life, for example, physicalism, if you go into physicalism, which denies the existence of consciousness, and eventually there would be a termination of the life at the end of the death, at the moment of death. So then one would think, oh, it's better to enjoy these pleasures as much as possible, because this is a very limited time that we have in a human life. So it's better to gratify our senses. So thoughts of sensuality would come based on the view he has. The thoughts are shaped by the view that we adhere to. These thoughts causes our physical and verbal actions. Therefore, having proper thoughts is very important, and it would come naturally, but we have to develop this. It's like even we are unable to do meditation, it's always better to have inclination towards meditation. Think that I would do it one day. Maybe in some periods we experience that we would get lazier and we would divert away from the practice, but still, as long as you have that intention, that is very helpful, because that would one day trigger for us to eventually execute our thoughts. Therefore, Samma Sankappa is given a very prominent place in our practice, in this path. Then, having thought, the next step would be acting, executing thoughts. The first, according to the Buddha, it's easier saying than done, right? Therefore, we come into this third stage based on our thoughts. Plus now we had a proper view, samadhi, correct view or right view. Then we had correct thoughts. So we got to know that it's better to abstain from the evil, do the good. Therefore, as a result, one would abstain from bad speeches. It's fourfold: lying, slandering, harsh words, and vain talk. So one would determine that I would not spend my time, or I would not use my words in these paths, in these acts. Therefore, he restrains from all these four types of evil or useless acts, I would call. Then, as a result, whatever speech he gives or whatever word he talks, whatever thing he puts out from his mouth, any word, would be truthful, would not harm anyone, would not hurt anyone, would lead for the harmony, not for the segregation, not for any racism. It would always be for the harmony of the humans, and also it would always be beneficial. It would not be something useless, any vain talk. So it's samavacha, the third step, the right speech, is twofold: restraining from the bad speech and performing the good speech. So if someone restrains from these four, it's natural that we are not going to keep silent. So naturally that we would be speaking proper speech. Then, as a result, when we develop this speech, what happens is we happen to have a proper bodily conduct. We abstain from killing, abstain from stealing, taking things from others, abstain from sexual misconduct. And instead, we always support the others and try to save the other beings, alleviate their suffering, and also protect the others' property, or maybe give something to others instead of taking, and also respect the families of others without getting into these bad deeds. So as a result, he would abstain from the evil bodily acts. Instead, he would perform acts that are helpful to others and also to himself. So these are all based on the thought. So Samma Sankappa triggers this speech and bodily behavior. Then there's another very important aspect in this path: the correct livelihood. Now think about our speech and think about our behaviors in terms verbal and physical behavior. Out of these behaviors, some are dedicated towards our livelihood. Most of our acts are not related to livelihood. Now think about you come into a home and watch a movie. This act is not related to our livelihood. This is just for our pleasures. The association that we have with our children or spouses, these are not related to us, related to our livelihood. If someone travels to another country or goes to investigate something, so in most of the cases, these are not related to our occupation. So these we do for our own pleasure or because we feel like doing. But certain acts are dedicated to our livelihood. So we should know that there are two aspects. Now the livelihood, though it is not given much attention, plays a huge role in our lives. Because what does it mean by livelihood? Livelihood means a means to support our lives, not only ours, also ones who are related to our lives, like our children, spouses, if our parents are older, even our parents, relatives, sometimes the friends who I need, whoever is sustaining from our life. So livelihood is a means to sustain our life and also the lives of the others who are related with us, with our lives, who are connected with our lives. Then we also know a fact that people who are good generally, sometimes for the sake of livelihood, they may come into evil means. Because now when the hunger comes up, a person who would not steal, there is a high possibility that he would end up stealing or snatching something from someone else for the sake of hunger, for the sake of supporting his children, because it's difficult for a father or mother to watch their children crying due to hunger. So they would find whatever means to support them. So even the saints could change into demons when it comes to living, for the sake of living, because we do admire our lives more than anything in the world, and we do admire our beloved ones' lives. We would not let our children or spouses to die away. So we would try our best. So even at that, when it comes to when it's a moment of testing. So when it comes to the reaches the red line, there's a high possibility that we may end up doing evil deeds. So therefore, instead of just mentioning correct speech and correct actions, the Buddha brought a new segment for the practice, saying correct livelihood. Because if someone can keep the livelihood at all the times, if he can maintain his ethics in the livelihood, it means that his practice is very high. He is able to bring his virtue, respect his virtue more than his life, more than the lives of their children. It's a very difficult part to practice. Once we are okay, once we are well off, or we have the money, we don't feel this part. Livelihood, the Sammajiva, is tested. It when the hardships come up, when the economic crises are there, when we doesn't have any money, when we lose our jobs. So that's the time the correct livelihood is being tested. So even at that time, Buddha expects us to have a proper livelihood. Does not break the ethics, does not break your virtue, even for the sake of your livelihood, for the sake of yourself, and also for the sake of your beloved ones. Therefore, it was given a very special place. And why does it come after Samma Vacha and Kammanth? Because it's not something very easy to practice. Only in most of the cases, a person who would not do evil deeds for fun or for the pleasure, they would practice this. Because think about a person who doesn't steal in his job. Now such a person, now for example, a person who keeps this precept, would not steal from others, there is a high possibility that he would not do it in his job as well. But if someone is naturally stealing, there's a high possibility that he may do it. Therefore, so this livelihood gets strengthened by your day-to-day acts. There is a possibility that someone who kills the animals would not steal during his job, or from his boss, or from the country, or whatever he's doing. But these are two different things. One who doesn't steal in the day-to-day life, there's a high possibility that he would not do it in his job as well. But one who doesn't care about this rule in his day-to-day life, there's a possibility that he may also break it. He may not do it because he would get fired, but when he has the opportunity, he would do it. So therefore, livelihood is strengthened. The proper, correct livelihood is strengthened when we have our actions and words properly conducted. Then now the virtue is completed. Good speech, correct speech, correct action, and correct livelihood. So it means our bodily and verbally behaviors are under control. So we have our limitations. We have put our boundaries. That is mainly because of the view. The view causes for good thoughts, and based on thoughts, we execute it. We brought it into our level of verbal acts, and then physical acts, and then even to the livelihood. Now our acts are very limited, and most of the case we are supposed to do some wholesome deeds. except in the case for lay people who may indulge in sensual pleasures accordingly, within the boundaries of the virtue. But in the most of the cases, we would not do any evil deeds. So there is a high possibility now that we are within the circle of the wholesomeness. Therefore, it's very easy for us to keep on putting effort, because what is left for us is good things. We are supposed to do good things. We have restrained from that. So then we eventually put effort to the good deeds. Now here we come a step ahead. Instead of just performing physical and verbal acts, we also need to focus on our mind and try to concentrate this, because even though we abstain from evil deeds, it's difficult for us to have a composed mind, a controlled mind. A controlled mind is very, very useful in our day-to-day life and also in the practice. Now, because our purpose was to understand the philosophy, understanding that to get rid of this suffering, in order to do that, we have to have a well-focused mind. For that, we have to keep on putting wholesome effort, doing wholesome deeds physically and verbally, and also try to maintain good thoughts in our mind, not letting the unwholesome thoughts to come up. As soon as it comes up, we have to suppress it, and also try to put effort to gain spiritual progress that we have not gained. This is called correct practice, correct effort. If it doesn't have a proper conduct, it will always be interrupted by our bad deeds. Therefore, having a proper correct speech, correct actions, and also a correct livelihood, right livelihood, would facilitate us to put more and more effort in our practice. So if we keep on putting effort, if you're always on the move, putting efforts to control our mind, control means to abandon the unwholesome deeds and also always to focus on wholesomeness. What happens? Eventually, our minds get entrenched in the wholesomeness. Like a stone that is put into water would eventually dips in, goes down, and lands on the surface, unmoving. Our minds would be entrenched or well rooted in the wholesomeness. That power which holds us in the wholesome side, which keeps us in the wholesome side without letting the mind to go astray into the unwholesome side, is called mindfulness. Sometimes you may have heard about mindfulness as the present moment focus. That is a part of the mindfulness. It's a partial explanation. The explanation of the Theravadians, the mindfulness is the force that keeps your mind in the wholesomeness. Even you are contemplating something which is past, something which would happen in future, as long as you are able to keep a composed mind, a wholesome mind, still the mindfulness is there. So mindfulness is the power that keeps you in the wholesome side. Even while you are contemplating the attributes of the Buddha, even while listening to Dhamma talk, you may not always be focusing on the present moment. But still, as long as the mind is not moving into the unwholesomeness, mindfulness is there. So that mindfulness occurs or strengthens only when we keep on putting effort. So Samma Vayama facilitates Samma Sati. So when Samma Sati is getting stronger, if our minds are well occupied in the wholesome side, the concentration would eventually grow up. We'd be able to focus on one object for a longer period. We'll be able to focus on our meditation subjects. And also when the concentration is high, we'll be able to focus on Dhamma talks. Whatever we read, we have a very good focus. So therefore, the focus increases. I would mention it as focus, but it's not a proper translation. Concentration is better, but with the concentration, you may have a proper focus, uninterrupted focus. That's called Samma Samadhi. Then this Samma Samadhi, now in certain meditation subjects such as Anapanasati or whatever the subject we choose, the concentration increases, then this concentrated mind can be used to see the ultimate truth. Now from the virtue, he jumped into the spiritual aspect of controlling his mind, concentrating his mind. Now that concentrated mind has to be used to see the truth, to see the nature of the life, which we discussed in the beginning. Why the rebirth is happening is because we don't understand true nature of the life. So we have to investigate the life. In order to investigate, we have to think, we have to look into the life. We have to look into the life in various aspects. It's not just looking into the life in one angle. We have to see nama, the mind and matter separately. The qualities of the mind, qualities of the matter, the four great elements, one after another. Even the true natures of this nama rupa, impermanence of this nature, this nature of suffering, nature non-selfness. So we have to focus, we have to look into these nama rupas in various angles. So we have to direct our mind. We just cannot just look into one thing in one angle. Now think about the gem that is on our hand. If you want to have a proper view on this, we have a proper look. We have to turn it from various sides from our fingers. Then only we'll be able to get the full picture of the gem. So likewise, we have to look into the life from various angles. So this is called correct thought again. So after Samma Sankappa, Samma Samadhi, Samma Sankappa comes up. Samma Sankappa means look into the lives in various angles. So when Samma Sankappa, with the Samma Sankappa, we are looking into the life with a deeper concentration, with the understanding that we already gain from our knowledge, we'll be able to see the reality. We'll be able to see the Nama and Rupa as they are. Samma Ditti would come up. We'll be able to see the conditioned nature of the realities. We'll be able to see the impermanence of nature of suffering, the non-selfness of the life. And also we'll be able to understand the blissfulness of the nirvana and the suffering of the samsara. So when we keep on looking into these aspects from various angles with Samma Sankappa, Samma Ditti would come up. This Samma Ditti is not just based on the knowledge of scriptures. So in the beginning, we started with the Samma Ditti which was gained through knowledge, studying, listening to Dhamma talks. Now this Samma Ditti is through the investigation. Due to the first Samma Sankappa was the thoughts of doing good deeds. Now this Samma Sankappa is looking into the life with various angles, in various angles. Then as a result, the vipassana jnanas, the deeper samadhi would come up. Then at one moment, having looked into these realities again and again for numerous times, at one point, the yogi, the person, would get convinced that it is not worthy attached into this life. So at one moment, the entire range of ignorance would be fully dispelled, and there would be no rebirth in him. So this is how I would like to explain the path to the liberation. So this path to the liberation, so so another way to explain, sometimes we do translate it as path, and another translation would be means. Not in the bad sense. Means the reasons, the causes, means by which we attain something. Samma Ditti is the means for the Samma Sankappa. Samma Sankappa is the means for the Samma Vacha. Samma Vacha is the means for the Samma Kammanta. So both of them are means for the Samma Ajiva. Then as a result, Samma Vayama, Samma Sati, Samma Samadhi, and again Samma Sankappa and Samma Ditti. So this is the path that would eventually lead to the full liberation. So I think I have taken much time. So this would be the talk that I would like to share today. To sum up, we understood the understood the phenomenon of the world, and he explained it as fourfold, the Four Noble Truths. Then the suffering, which is the existence, which we admire most in the end. Then the cause of the suffering is the craving, which recurs this causes for the occurring of this life again and again after death. And the cessation would be the end of this birth, so there will be no suffering at all. Then this is the path leading towards the liberation. To end up, one can ask a question: if there is no birth, how can this nirvana be blissful? How can this nirvana, what is the purpose of attaining this nirvana? So, and also someone can ask a question: what happens to us if there is no birth? The answer would be, in order to get eliminated in nirvana, even at this moment, there is no person called I. If you investigate, you'd find only Nama and Rupa. So what happens in Nirvana is the cessation of two elements, Nama and Rupa, mind and matter, which are not self, though we think it's a self, which are impermanent, which are full of suffering. So therefore, in order to understand the bliss of Nirvana, you have to understand the true natures of this Nama and Rupa. If there is, so it's not self, it's full of suffering. It's an impermanent reality. So therefore, this path leads to a ultimate ultimate bliss. So this path is explained as Eightfold Path, which would eventually leads to the liberation from the suffering. Yeah, that would be my Dhamma talk, and I wish you all the best. May all of you be able to practice this Eightfold Path, and one day attain the final bliss called Nirvana.
Thank you so much. Venerable Maggavihari, and I think it was really the beginning of a wonderful Dhamma talk series that we are going to continue from this week. And really appreciate Venerable Maggavihari's. He's got a very busy schedule. He's working so hard to propagate the Dhamma, and it's an honor to have him with us for the benefit of um, our community all around the world. We want to make sure that we are all together sending this message to the rest of the world as much as we can for the benefit of all of them. And now we have some questions, and we also encourage everyone to ask some questions. This is Q&A session. Maybe Venerable Maggavihari, I would like to maybe ask a question for the benefit of the others. In the Noble Eightfold Path, we have threefold discipline or tisika, right? Sila, Samadhi, Panya. So Sila is the beginning, Samadhi next, and Panya is the ultimate step. So some people ask, why do we have Panya or Sammaditiyam, Samma Sankappa at the beginning of the Noble Eightfold Path? Your thoughts, please?
Okay, thank you, Bhante, for the question. And it is really an interesting and important question. So I think in the explanation in the Dhamma talk, I explained that after Samma Samadhi, we again come into Samma Sankappa and Samma Ditti. So that would be the Panya part. That would be the, if you say Sila, Samadhi, Panya, Sila starts from Samma Vacha, Kammanta Ajiva, Samma Vayama Sati, Samadhi is Samadhi part, and Samma Sankappa and Ditti are the Panya part. So that's how the sequence goes. Then the question comes, why Samma Ditti and Samma Sankappa was put in the beginning? One thing is, it would be redundant. If we place Samma Ditti and Samma Sankappa again at the end, it will be repeating. It's redundant. So why it was brought in the beginning? So explanation is, why do we come into Sila? It's because we have an intention to do Sila. We think about it. We have we are inclined towards this. That's why we observe Sila. If we don't have such an inclination, or if we don't have such thoughts, we would not come into such restraining, because observing a Sila is something, it's sort of a burden actually in the end, because it's a sort of a responsibility that we enforce in ourselves by ourselves. So why do we have such thoughts is because of according to our understanding. Therefore, without an understanding, with whatever the doctrine we studied, so I'll focus on the Buddha's teachings here. So only when we get to know that what is evil, what is good and bad, then only we would be encouraged to follow a proper Sila. Therefore, though this explanation goes as Sila, Samadhi, Panya in most of the places, we find that in order to come to sila also, there should be some sort of understanding, some sort of correct view, and some thoughts has to occur, which would push us, which would give a pressure within ourselves to observe such sila. Therefore, these samma ditthiya and samma sankappa mentioning in the beginning are prerequisites even for the sila. But in some other places, we find sila, samadhi, panya starting from sila, ending middle in the samadhi and ending in the wisdom. But why the question comes, why do we need this? Why do we observe this sila? Is because of some sort of understanding. Therefore, there is a basic level of understanding in the beginning. So therefore in the Eightfold Path, Buddha mentioned this samma ditthiya and samma sankappa in the beginning, but he didn't mention it again in the end because it's redundant. It repeats again. So it means samma ditthiya and samma sankappa would be in two places. Instead of explaining this in two places, he just kept it in the beginning because they are very useful in order to explain this path. Because another point is, in some other sutras we find, I think Bhante is aware of this, in some places Buddha has mentioned samma ditti pure javan. Samma ditti goes in the front, because without proper samma ditti we cannot have a samma sila, proper sila. And also in another place Buddha mentions the two factors that are foremost in our practice: silancha parisuddhang ditticha ujukha, having a clear view, proper view, and a pure conduct. Therefore, view that is explained, the correct view, has to come in the beginning. In some places, just without focusing on this view, encouraging a person who has already come in, who has already become a Buddhist, or who has already entered in the path, then what he has to do is sila, samadhi, panya. But how does he get into the path? It's because of samma ditthiya and samma sankappa. Therefore, according to what I understand, this Eightfold Noble Path has been explained, showing how someone begins the practice. So it should not be mixed with the other teachings that explain about sila, samadhi, panya, which was advocated to the ones who have already entered into the correct view.
Thank you so much, Venerable Maggavihari, for that wonderful answer. I also always try to see the analogy of what we call the navigation of the car. If we
Yes.
don't have the right view, if we don't have the navigation correct, we might end up our destination. It will take long time. We might take wrong exits. So it's very helpful to have that navigation. So too is the samadhi, the right view. So that is
Yes,
why samadhi comes first. It's very important that we have the samadhi. Let us try to enhance our samadhi, right view, so that we can practice our noble eightfold path, the way to nibbana. I do have some questions here, and let me see. Okay. Okay, I think Teja Shinde. This is a comment. He is one of the best I have personally come across. Glad to hear Dhamma from him. Teja Shinde, thank you. And let me go to Happy Sunny's question. Bhante Namo Buddhaya. If the situation of home where parents always keep swearing and curse themselves and others because of bad habits, as a child who could choose to leave, do leave them and keep distance with less contacts. Are these breaking sila? This is from Happy Sunny.
Breaking sila means keeping less contact with from the parents is breaking the sila of the child. Is it the question?
If the situation of home where parents always keep swearing and curse, themselves and others because of bad habits. As a child who could choose to leave or do leave them and keep distance with less contact. So it looks like sometimes the parents, the family backgrounds can create situations where you have difficulties. Maybe sometimes children even feel better to, get rid of them, and they want to keep distance. Uh, so I think the person is asking, is it breaking sealer to leave them?
It is not a breaking a sila to leave, but whenever the parents are in of need, that is our duty to support them. So it's also a mutual thing. What I feel is the parents have to guide their children, especially abusing is not something that is encouraged at all. We always need to be compassionate and have an endless loving kindness towards the children, because they are born because of us, and we are our refuge. Parents are the refuge of the children. So I think most of the parents would have a endless loving kindness, but sometimes due to some characters, some behaviors, and difficult, even humans are having problems in themselves. So maybe the parents are also having some hard time, they're also having some economic problems, issues. Maybe the children are not aware of that. Maybe that's why their frustration is coming out through their children. I'm not appreciating that. So we have to have a broader understanding on this, rather than saying it's better to keep distance because we don't know the entire picture. But whatever it is that according to the teachings that I have studied and what I believe, what I adhere to, whatever the faults that the parents has, if it is unbearable, if it is just harming yourself, it's better. It's allowable to leave. The Bodhisattva has done it one life. If you look in the Burijatta Jataka, he left his father because he was with his father, but in the end he found out that being with him would cause him to fall into a bad destination in the end. So he left his father, who happened to be Devadatta in that life. So it is possible that it is something that has been done by the Bodhisattva even in the past life. But when it comes to the duties of the parents, whenever it is necessary, in case now, if a child had to leave, for example, if it is unbearable and if he eventually had to leave, I'm not advising because I don't know the entire situation, because it's difficult to answer such questions in general because they are always specific cases. So if he happens to leave them or to be apart from them, but still when they are in need, so children has to take care of them. Another example given by the Bodhisattva, due to lust, his mother, the Bodhisattva took care of her. The story goes that due to lust with some student of this Bodhisattva who was a teacher, the mother tried to kill the Bodhisattva who was taking care of the child, due to being blind with lust. But in the end, the mother died due to a natural cause. It says that the Bodhisattva did all the rituals that were due to his mother. He respected him. He gave all the respect. Even while she was alive, he gave all the respect for all the duties. And even after she died, he gave the due respect. So because whatever the problems, whatever the difficulties, or whatever defects the parents do possess, we are alive because of them. So we every breath we take, every action we do, every achievement that we make, there is always some debt towards the parents. Even the Buddha had it. So he repaid it by making them enlightened. So therefore, keeping distance in such cases would not break any of your silas, but always keep in mind, we should not abandon them completely. When they are in need, when they need us, we should always be there. Even for monks, it's admonished. Monks, according to our Vinaya, we have to treat our parents when they are in need, not always, when they are sick, when they are in need, we have to treat them like our teachers. So there is always distance for the monks with the mother, not to touch and so forth because of our lives, the sila. For the nuns, to keep distance from father, but we can do all the caring through others. But for the father, we can take care even with our hands. For the nuns, the mother. So therefore, personally, I would like to answer it like that without specifically mentioning what to do in such cases.
Okay, thank you so much. I think, Sunny, yes, if it is really, really difficult for you to live with your parents due to some reason, you can maybe take a little break. Uh, um, you still should take care of your parents. You have to send more loving kindness to them. Maybe they need your help. Maybe you need to practice and stronger within, and later on try to help your parents. That will be a wonderful payback to your parents. As Venerable Maggavihari said, we can't really forget them because every breath we take, um, we owe them so much. Yes, and we have another question from one of our Facebook friends. Venerable, according to Abhidhamma, the state of mind before we die is one of the most important in order we can be born in the good next life. Is there any mantra or object that we can focus for us to for us for as Putujana that hasn't reached any jhana yet? Thank you. Uh,
Uh, yes, Bhante.
is the question clear, Bante?
Yes, I think is there a way to have a secure rebirth, right? Is there any security, that any mantra or something that you can have in order to have a secured rebirth? I think that's how I understood.
Okay.
So I have not heard about such a mantra according to the Buddha's teachings. So if we are looking for a mantra, is that the best mantra is to have a proper sila, to have proper conduct. So try to practice to abstain from evil deeds. The thing is, in the end, I would not be able to give a guarantee. There's no assurance for a putujana. Even if you have had jhanas, you can lose it at the moment of death, and you can end up in a woeful realm. That is still possible. Possibilities are there. If you think about the probability and possibility is there, and there is a probability as well. But so there is no assurance as long as we are putujanas. But the thing is, if you look into the sutras, most of the places Buddha mentioned, if you have practiced good virtue, you will end up in the blissful states. If you are unvirtuous, you will end up in the woeful states. So we have to focus on these two sutras in the beginning, in the first place. So keep a good sila. Sila means it's not like just giving a dana and performing a certain deed. Sila means you have to maintain it. Virtue is that you are maintaining. You have to. We have to practice it day and night. Only the time we are sleeping will not be aware of what we are doing. Otherwise, we have to have certain main standards about our day-to-day behavior. So sila is something that we practice constantly. Then what happens? So if we are practicing something constantly, at the moment of death, there is a very less possibility that it would go into a bad state and you end up in a bad realm. But it's not 100% assurance, but most probably you will end up in a good state. So that is the benefit of a sila. But there is a possibility. There are cases. The ones who had sila ended up in woeful realms. One who didn't have a sila, luckily doing a good deed close to death, ended up in the good realms. There are possible. There are some special, exceptional cases, but we should not generalize this. Because there are numerous sutras Buddha mentions. A person with good virtue would end up in a good realm. Person with a bad virtue would end up in bad realms. This is the general explanation of the Buddhist teachings. Therefore, try to maintain a good sila. That's the key here. That's the key. So then, if you are still concerned, what we can do is always try to maintain some sort of mindfulness, always try to have good thoughts as much as possible. I know it's not possible. I know it's not possible because someone can ask while we are watching a movie or while we are doing some sensual stuff. If something happens, yes, samsara sometimes do check your luck. There is some things like that. But overall, if you are involved in some activity which does not degrade your mind greatly. Now, for example, if you are in a nightclub enjoying something or some complete indulgence in sensuality, there is a high possibility that you may end up in a bad realm if you unfortunately happen to die that moment. But in most of the cases, for example, if you had a car crash or if someone suddenly dies with a heart attack, if you have maintained a good sila, the probability is very high. Is very high. Even though you scare the death, scaring for death is natural. It would have happened to anyone. Scaring the death, normally it happens. Anyone would be afraid to death. So that fear, if it is very high, that can cause your rebirth. But if just mere fear that comes at death is not going to cause you to a rebirth, because as long as you have maintained a good sila. So at the moment of death, the mechanism is a bit different, because a karma has to come forth. Just becoming fear, just having a certain fear is not surely going to end you up and lead you to a woeful realm. So therefore, when you have maintained a good sila throughout the life to some period, even though some sort of fear comes, sudden death, the possibility is very high a good wholesome deed would come up, because you are virtuous, would come up and takes you to good realm. So therefore, the best mantra, as long as I know, is maintaining a good sila, and also try to be mindful as much as possible. So other than that, if you want a full assurance, you have to be a sotapanna. There's no shortcuts for that.
There are no shortcuts to success. Nibbana. Yes. Yeah, I think in our Buddhist society, we also do have those, some of the Buddhist chantings that people like to hear when they are in the deathbed. So maybe some of those mantras, maybe, you can use
Yes.
some of them as well. Um, okay, thank you so
Yeah,
much.
to add something, Bhante,
Yeah.
yes, if you keep on reciting something like Itipiso or the Buddha's attributes as a habit, that's very useful. That's very
Mhm.
useful. It would always gets rid of your unwholesomeness.
Yeah.
If you'd like to have such a mantra, take some verse, something that you like, or a sutra, or a certain part, keep on reciting this. This would not only leads you to a good destination, it would expel your defilements and would enhance your spirituality as well. So it's always good, as Bhante said, to keep some chanting always, if possible. Yeah, that would increase the possibility or probability of you getting into a blissful state as well.
I remember Most Venerable Navayani Ariyadhamma Hamdro was saying all the time, you keep reciting Itipiso Bhagava Arahang, that will help you more, energize yourself with the blessings of the Buddha. Yeah, I think some of the things, like you make it a habit. Keep like when we are scared, we say Itipiso, we just have that habit. Those things can be really life saving sometimes, and also life saving from falling yourself to lower realms, even at the very difficult situations. Yeah, keep yourself in more closer to the Dhamma. Buddha Dhamma Sangha can help you all. Thank you so much. And we have another question from Tejas Shinde. Bhante, please share some suggestions on how to execute Samma Vaya without straining oneself too much.
Without straining oneself too much, it means sometimes we do put extra effort and get tired. Is it? I think that's what is meant, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I would like to say that there is an explanation in the commentaries that in our sasana there is a special case that Buddha asked someone to reduce his effort. That was Venerable Sona, who had an excessive effort. In most of the other cases, effort is not enough. That's the reality. So most of us have to increase the effort. That's the thing. So we have to keep in mind, we should not be thinking that our effort is enough. If our effort is enough, then we'll be able to already attain some higher spirituality. So we have to always keep in mind that our effort is not enough. We have to keep on increasing it. I think the question would be like, when you keep on putting effort without much balance, it can fall into agitation. It can fall into restlessness. There's an explanation like this. Yes, it's true if it is not balanced with samadhi. So in such case, what we have to do is we have to increase the samadhi, and the effort would balance with the samadhi. So the first thing I would like to say is always never keep an attitude that the effort is enough. Our effort is not enough. That's what we have to keep in our first place. But then some are not capable of balancing it, may put some effort, that unnecessary sort of effort that is not required for our practice. So this, to my understanding, this is some sort of a skill that we have to develop in our practice. If you are talking about meditation, for example, if you are talking about meditation, sometimes we just try our best to focus on the object, maybe with some excessive effort than what is really required. So this can cause for some agitation. For that, we have to have a very calm sort of mind, because we know that if you are in a hurry, you'll not be able to do certain things. For example, just think about putting a key into the keyhole. If we have to have some sort of composure or concentration in order to do that, otherwise we'll not be able to do. Even for example, if some animal is chasing us, if you want to go into the room, if we get agitated, we'll not be able to do it properly. So likewise, in our meditation, we should not have an sort of a hurry, that you should not be in a hurry to get into a higher concentration. So these are sort of unnecessary efforts that we are putting. So always be relaxed. That would be my advice. Always be relaxed. There is a saying of a nice Thai Ajahn, meditation master in Thailand. He has mentioned, I have a very short lifespan, I have very limited time, therefore I walk, I practice slowly. The thing is, if you are in a hurry, you'll not be able to perform your act properly. Therefore, sometimes excessive effort can be mixed with a certain kind of hurry that causes the agitation. So we have to be relaxed all the time. We have to be relaxed, and we have to be satisfied with the progress. Satisfied not in the sense to stop our progress. We have to be satisfied. Oh yes, because I'm practicing now, so I'll try to go step by step, slowly. Whatever the progress I guess, I embrace it happily. So in that case, I would like to say, be relaxed more. Be relaxing. Otherwise, do not reduce the effort. For example, now this is in meditation. If think about, now you have to meditate daily at a certain period. You have to keep this consistency. So you have to keep on putting effort every day. So we should not reduce this. Even one's mind is agitated, what we have to do is we have to keep on practicing again and again. We should not reduce. such sort of daily activities that we are supposed to do, because our effort is not enough at in the ultimate sense. Sometimes if it is mixed with certain emotions, the need to grow fast, need to attain quickly, this sort of hurry feeling would make us effort unnecessary. So therefore, when you're meditating, always be relaxed and accept whatever happens, because as long as you are putting effort and focusing, that is indeed a progress that we are making in terms of samsara.
Thank you so much for the wonderful answer, Venerable Maggavihari. Tejas Shinde, I think you also can already must have listened to him explaining about those fourfold efforts that we want to make in our life, about the unwholesome, cultivate more wholesome, and get rid of the unwholesome, and not allowing any uninvited unwholesome thoughts, but allowing more and more wholesome thoughts into yourself, cultivating them, multiplying them, improving them, so that you can also maintain good sammavayam. Thank you for the question. Um, we have Buddy MC. It's wonderful how Bhante explains the Dhamma in a logical manner. Thank you so much. And we also have another question from Alexander Chuang. According to Abhidhamma, the state of mind before we die is one of the most important in order we can be born in the good next life. So the question is there any mantra or object that we can focus for us as Putujana that hasn't reached any jhana yet? Is
The
that the
same
same?
question, Bhante.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's the same question. We have that already answered. Okay, we have people from Nepal also watching, people from different parts. Thank you everyone for joining. And okay, we have another question from Anchal Singh. How to define a line for keeping silence? Sometimes I feel a person can bring awareness by voice, but sometimes it goes in a wrong direction because there were not complete understanding of intentions. So,
I didn't get the answer question fully, Bhante. Sorry for that.
okay,
Can you
how
repeat
to
it?
define a line for keeping silence? Sometimes I feel a person can bring awareness by voice, but sometimes it goes in a wrong direction because there were not complete understanding of intentions. So here, I think, Anchal, if you can make it a little simpler or reword, maybe it can also be helpful. We'll get back to you as soon as possible. So I think what she wants to ask here is to define noble silence. Maybe in Buddhism we also talk about the noble silence, and uh, yeah, sometimes people can bring such awareness. I think by voice, but sometimes it goes in a wrong direction. Um, yeah, there can be some wrong misinterpretations as well, so that you can be led to wrong directions. Um, Keeping silence is important, but I think we also need, again, we need the right view. Maybe if Venerable Maggavihari can explain a little bit more now.
Is it like in some occasions that instead of making our voice and let others know our intentions, uh, it can go wrong? So is it better to keep silent? Is it that's the way I understood the question?
Yeah, I think we will get back to that later on. Okay, so we have another question from Maitra. Vandami Bhante, how Buddhism helps someone when they are going through a depression?
Oh, Buddhism helps us. That is one of the best medicines that we can have. Because in depression, we always think negatively in most of the cases. I haven't gone through depression, so I'm not be able to explain it with my experience. I think what I've heard, what I've listened or learned, that we keep on having negative thoughts and we restrain from our proper activities, and we are trapped in certain kind of negativity. So when the depression is found, so and also there are certain things that can trigger depression, maybe a loss of some beloved one, or maybe some acts that have something that happened in our lives, maybe that we were unable to achieve what we wanted. Sometimes we are not satisfied with ourselves. So all these various reasons can be for depression. Therefore, it's quite difficult to answer depression in general, because there are various reasons and various aspects of depression, as far as I know. One general solution can be, in Buddhism, we explains that the non-selfness is a very important factor. Because in most of the cases, if you go into the root causes of depression, we find that it's based on the factor of I. Why this happened to me? It happened to me. He went away from me. He cheated me, or I am not a capable person, and so forth. So having a non-self, knowing the non-self doctrine would also alleviate the intensity of depression is possible. And then if depression has occurred because of some sort of action that we have done in past, so it's caused by regret. So Buddhism always encourages us not to focus on what we have done in the past, rather focus on the present moment and try to do the good that we can we are supposed to do. So if it's caused by regret, Buddhism has lots of medicine for this. There are lots of explanations and supportive factors, supporting instructions. If it is based on the factor of I, the non-self doctrine would let us understand, and also to us not to get attached to certain things, so we are able to let go most of things in our lives, most of the thoughts that we get, even that would also be helpful. And if things are not going well, there are also instructions given by Buddha that if you are unable to control your unwholesome thoughts, you can just focus on some other way, some other good things, divert your attention and to get involved with something that you really like. So therefore, I think based on the nature of depression, in most of the cases, Buddhism would have lots of instructions. So I think it's quite difficult to explain in general terms how Buddhism would deal with depression, because I haven't done that research or done that thought about it or done the studies on that. To my limited knowledge on this issue, I would say the non-self doctrine of non-selfness can surely help. The admonishments given to remove the regret would surely help in some cases. The admonishment given to divert the attention would give some cases, and also when you are involved in good wholesome deeds. Another factor is depression is mostly related to anger. Anger means a sort of negativity. In ultimate sense, we call it anger, aspect of anger. So when we keep on doing wholesome deeds, naturally, even without our any intentions, it's natural for us to feel bliss. It's natural for us to be happy, to have the inner peace. So naturally, if you keep on doing wholesome deeds, there's no room for depression at all. Depression comes because our mind is occupied by unwholesome thoughts rather than wholesome thoughts. So as Buddhism always encourages us to do wholesome deeds as much as possible, so more you do the wholesome deeds, surely the depression would not have an opportunity to retain in our minds. So I think if someone follows Buddhism deeply, depression would not have any chance in our minds.
Yeah, I think that's a very wonderful answer. And also, my tongue, we would like to suggest you practice loving kindness meditation. Send loving kindness to yourself and to others so that it can bring more positive energy to you. And this anapanasati, it can also help you maintain your balance. Also, maybe listening to some Dhamma talks. Sometimes, especially in the pandemic, people when they were locked down, a lot of people had depression. They were having that claustrophobic feelings all the time. I think that time many monks they started these online healing. They were chanting, and they were also doing giving Dhamma talks, sharing with all of you. And I think listening to Dhamma talks can also be very helpful. If you know some good Kalyana Mitta friends, any monk or any wonderful friend, make sure you are in touch with them. They will always be for you. Okay, and today, luckily, we also have the technology to be connected, just like Venerable Maggavihari, who is now in Sri Lanka. We are in the other side of the earth, and we can still be connected live just now. So stay in touch with them, and the more you practice, the more you are in the right path. Some of those even celestial beings can help us find the right people, good people. Thinking thus, we always would like to also send loving kindness, blessing to all those people who are suffering in the world. Yeah, thank you so much. And I think with that, we would like to conclude today. It was a very wonderful beginning to our series Dhamma Talks. Really appreciate Venerable Maggavihari's comprehensive coverage of the opening Dhamma talk today. And again, this is very open to all of you and all those people who are watching us today. Make sure you mark your calendar for next week, Sunday. We will meet again. And we would like to invite all of you to join us, share the knowledge, learn the Dhamma, and hopefully it will help you and I to find the right path, go along the right path, and inch closer to the Sotapanna, open the gate, and then we will all be able to get rid of the lower realms. And that's really important. With that, we conclude today's Dhamma talk with Venerable Maggavihari. We would like to also invoke blessings upon all the technical team that we had from IIT and Dhamma USA. Thank you everyone for your support in the back end. And thank everyone for joining us and also posting questions that will also help the other people. And looking forward to seeing you again next week. May you all be well, happy, healthy, safe. May the Noble Triple Gem bless you, help you, protect you, and guide you towards the right path. May all and Brahmas and all sentient beings also receive this merit, share this merit, be well, happy, healthy, safe wherever they are. May all of them and all of us be able to attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana, the absolute peace and happiness at the end of our samsara. Thinking thus, let us keep our palms together close to our heart and say three times, Sadhu, Sadhu,
Sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu. Let us transform it to devas and other beings with Venerable Maggavihari leading.
Dangbo nyati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Idangbo nyati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Idangbo nyati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Akasattha ca bhummattha devanaga mahindika. පුඤ්ඤන්තං අනුමෝදිත්වා චිරන් රක්ඛන්තු සම්බුද්ධ ශාසනං ආකාසට්ඨා ච බුම්මට්ඨා දේවා නාග මහිද්దికා පුඤ්ඤන්තං අනුමෝදිත්වා චිරන් රක්ඛන්තු සම්බුද්ධ දේශනං ආකාසට්ඨා ච බුම්මට්ඨා දේවා නාග මහිද්దికා පුඤ්ඤන්තං අනුමෝදිත්වා චිරන් රක්ඛන්තු සම්බුද්ධ ශාවකේ තිරං රක්ඛන්තු ත්වං සදා ඉදම්මේ පුඤ්ඤ කම්මං ආසවක්ඛයාවං හෝතු ඉදම්මේ පුඤ්ඤ කම්මං ආසවක්ඛයාවං හෝතු ඉදම්මේ පුඤ්ඤ කම්මං ආසවක්ඛයාවං හෝතු සබ්බ දුක්ඛා පමුඤ්චතු
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you.